Welcome to From the Mountaintops Building Community Enterprise, a podcast where we explore the building blocks of economic and community development. Today, we are exploring cultural tourism and financial resources. I'm excited about this because this particular aspect is one I'm not as familiar with. So you will receive a lot of information if you're listening and haven't been aware of some of these different opportunities. You're not alone. I am joined by our wonderful guest, Rosalind McPherson. She is the president and CEO of the Roz Group, and also by Jessica Firmstone, who is the VP and Community Development Liaison. Thank you both, ladies, for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Well, I want to kick things off with getting a bit of understanding of the projects that you do. Roz, I'll start with you, as you both have quite a bit of knowledge when it comes to cultural tourism. Tell us a little bit about your experience and kick us off.
We're a strategic planning project management firm with several unique areas of expertise. We manage the construction of historic sites and museum exhibitions. We provide opportunities for community engagement, ensuring that people's voices are heard and that they can have a say in the matters that affect them. And then we also are specialists in taking the nugget of an idea that an organization might have through to completion. So we work at the intersection of science, history, and the arts.
That's amazing, and so many facets. Jessica, with WesBanco Bank, certainly there is a different aspect that you all tackle with this. Tell us about your aspects of cultural tourism.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, WesBanco Bank is a bank that is headquartered in Wheeling, West Virginia. So West Virginia is a state that's near and dear to our hearts. And we are a currently $17 billion bank, but with the acquisition of Premier Bank, we are looking to grow to about $27 billion in assets. And one of the unique things about WesBanco is that we have our own community development entity, which is WesBanco Bank Community Development Corp. And that is really how we administer our new markets tax credits. But additionally, we are extremely vetted into CRA and the Community Reinvestment Act, and we're very proud of our 8 consecutive outstanding ratings in that review.
Excellent. Yes, this is going to be very interesting with you ladies bringing 2 different aspects of both tourism and the funding. Jessica, you mentioned something right off, and I'd love to continue that conversation. When you talked about CRA and new tax credits, for the uninitiated, could you give a brief about what this is, and then also some ways that WesBanco partners with communities?
Absolutely. So CRA is, of course, the Community Reinvestment Act, and it is an act that ensures that banks are reinvesting in low-income communities where they live and work and serve. New Markets Tax Credits are a federal program that was established in 2000, and the goal of that program was to incentivize investment into low-income communities as well. It's administered by the U.S. Treasury CDFI fund, and the way that it works is that investors receive a 39% federal tax credit over 7 years for their equity investments into community development entities, CDEs. And those CDEs then take those investments and turn them into funding for community development projects throughout their areas. There are several ways that this happens, and there are a lot of nuances that would take forever for us to get into, but WesBanco's is a little unique because we actually administer ours as a revolving loan fund, which simplifies the transaction a little bit. It allows us to bring those advantages of New Markets Tax Credits to smaller dollar projects. So when you use a creative structure like that, you can utilize New Markets for a $200,000 project or a $20 million project. So it's a great advantage for helping these projects get to the finish line.
That's great. And that's a wonderful way to make it make sense for those of us who aren't familiar. And certainly, Roz, I imagine that you have leveraged these in a number of ways through your different endeavors. Could you share a bit about how you've either used these or some interesting ways that these tax credits and funds have been incorporated overall in some of your projects?
So it's the client who often leverages these tax credits in a whole myriad of ways, because not only do we operate in that tourism space, but we operate in economic development and workforce development as well. So those are some really good areas where these kinds of credits surface. And, at one point I was the CEO of Philadelphia Urban League. So again, we leveraged those kinds of credits with some of the clients that we worked with there. So these are all very important arenas when it comes to the whole business of elevating people and elevating businesses.
I like that. And I'd love you to continue with a bit more about this because it sounds like not only for the different clients and different projects, but it sounds like there may be some overlap where there is that tourism, there is that funding, but also that community empowerment and
Yes.
giving back to the community. Share a bit more about that.
So I'm going to share that from a couple of different angles. I've been involved in the tourism business for about 20 some years, actually longer, because when I first came to Philadelphia, the city was evolving at that point, and the tourism folks were trying to make that area attractive to outsiders. They were always the stepchild competing with New York. So they were also ignoring some real strong markets that they had to attract visitors. It's about heads and beds when it comes to tourism and convention businesses. So back at that time, I had a daughter who was a recent college grad who would travel from LA to Miami so they could hang out in hotel rooms. And Philadelphia was not even acknowledging that there was this robust group of Black college grads that spent lots of money on tourism types of initiatives. Philadelphia also was a leader in creating a market for gay tourism, another group that spends a lot of money. So when you start looking at where the dollars can be spent to ensure that there are heads and beds and what is required to make an attraction really wonderful, that becomes a whole new opportunity for a city or for a region. As a matter of fact, the Lynx, which is a historic African American group of women, once had a conference in downtown Philadelphia and bought out every shoe in Macy's. That's economic impact. That is, you know, so tourism is really about economic impact. The restaurants, decent hotels in a variety of budget scenarios, and of course legacy experiences. So that's what it's really all about. And when I first came to Philly, I was actually running a major science museum. And you do know that visitors to your area are more likely to come than folks who live there and have lived there all along. There's a different sense of urgency. So attracting these varied audiences makes a lot of sense, and they have finally caught on. And we also see a more diverse group of executives in the business. As a matter of fact, a good friend just became the president of New York's tourism, and that's a multi-billion-dollar operation. And she had experience in San Diego. So, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this subject, but I don't want to take up all the time.
Well, I love it. And you brought up some really good things, but one I'd love Jessica to piggyback on this notion of the kind of the ecosystem of money that goes back into a community when we
Yeah.
focus on cultural tourism. For West Virginia, because we are isolated and we are rural, those pockets are not as common as in a New York or a Philadelphia. Jessica, I'd love to get your feedback on ways that for either people who are getting funding or ways that you all are looking to partner to bring more of that cultural tourism and make it more prominent in West Virginia and how your bank is helping them.
Yeah, absolutely. West Virginia has historically faced economic challenges, declining industries, population loss, underinvestment, and tools like new markets tax credits and other development fields in the toolbox can help catalyze new industries. So tourism, healthcare, education, those kind of fields. So that provides infrastructure and momentum for rural and underserved areas to reinvest in their communities. It can also help to spark broader community revitalization. One catalytic project can actually bring others in, and then the entire neighborhood is being redeveloped. And one of the other key pieces is to attract and retain young talent and entrepreneurs. And so as we as a bank look to partner with various entities throughout West Virginia and across our entire footprint, we really are focused on those underserved and distressed communities to help out with projects, again, that could catalyze that additional investment and bring in the next green space or the next transportation assistance. So it's a struggle, but it's something that we are really working together and working with our partners in the state to help improve on.
And that's really interesting because I am a recipient of kind of that outreach. I moved here from New York City about 2 years ago as part of the Ascend West Virginia project, which for those of you who may not be familiar, it is a remote worker program that started about 3 or 4 years ago now to recruit remote workers and entrepreneurs to West Virginia, to relocate them. We're there for at least 2 years. We'll be here on our 3rd year at least until kiddo goes to college. And so I'm like one of the beneficiaries of that type of outreach, and it's been a beautiful experience, like on a very personal level. I'm curious and just still sticking with kind of this topic, as I think it's really important when we're looking at that funding and how it's impacting these communities. What are some ways that you all are hoping that in the next, let's say 5 years, that you're really hoping to see businesses either come in and flourish within that cultural tourism space, or ways that businesses that are already here can now leverage this funding that they may not have been aware of? And either one of you can take that on first.
So I wanted to react or respond to a couple of things that Jessica said. I find that there are people who are interested in the rural experience. It's not always the hubbub. And I am new to the West Virginia experience, and it's a beautiful state with a lot to offer. And sometimes people are looking to just step off of that overextended excess that we often find ourselves in. Self-care and breathing, well, I'm going to say breathing the air can be conflicting depending on where you are. But so when it comes to offering a multitude of experiences, you want to market that there are different things for different people. Now, in many of my projects, I'm involved in active fundraising or fund development strategies. So more so than the credits. It's a very competitive market out there right now, especially for cultural attractions. There is chaos reigning right now because so many cultural arts organizations, history, legacy organizations are having to deal with the volatility of a very different administration. And that's not a political statement. It's just a statement of fact. So one of the things that we have to, and there are very different levels of sophistication when it comes to how to raise money. But the first is being clear about your vision and what you have to offer, and having a really solid business plan, because gone are the days where people just give you dollars just because. They need to see that there's going to be a return on investment, that the leadership understands business, and that they're prepared to be good stewards of a sustainable resource. So these are key elements before we even get to what is the experience you're offering. And you've got to do a significant amount of research. And then all of this goes into presenting your case to a host of potential funders. It's also important to take a look at who might be some good collaborative partners, because funders like to see partnership and collaboration because it creates economies of scale and ensures that there is an expanded reach to a potential audience. And also, I think an investment in good looking materials will often yield better things. So you got to look at what is your mix of funding, revenue, etc. whether it's revenue you're generating, dollars from grants, dollars from organizations like Jessica's. It's a whole mix. And how is this going to be sustainable? Because let's not forget that COVID rocked the entire world, and there are organizations that are still skittish and still trying to get back on track. But with that comes significant opportunity. And what I've enjoyed about my recent trips to Virginia is looking at the fact that Huntington is a college town with some very strong corporations there, if you will, big ones that most people wouldn't even realize are present. So all of that is a combination for creating a visitor experience that has appeal. And the last thing I'll say for this question is that any project that one creates has to be for a multitude of audiences, not just one. So when you look at ethnically specific projects in particular, yes, it's great for us to provide the history of the region for Black people, but everybody needs to be aware of that history and legacy. And I have been pleasantly surprised to see the number of white folks out there who are shepherds and stewards of the Underground Railroad history. So I like that cross-cultural thing because it makes for a more welcoming and saleable experience, if you will.
Yeah, those are some fire things. Like that's just, you gave so much good information for people who are just starting out, who are maybe they have the idea that they're kicking around what they need to have in place, for those who already have something and might be in that sort of recovery space, some things that they could take into consideration. And even for those that are established and wanting to continue on, you gave some great information about all of that. Jessica, I want to come to you and again, sharing your vision. What are you hoping, or what is WesBanco hoping for in the next 5 years or so to really see around cultural tourism in particular and the use of funding for these different businesses in West Virginia?
Cultural tourism projects have historically struggled to attract capital, traditional capital. So these projects almost always have to blend creative financing. And so that's grants, new market tax credits, historic tax credits, philanthropy, whatever it is, to bring that together. I think one of the biggest things that would really help these projects is ultimately going after that community buy-in right from the start. So they have to be authentic, they have to be community driven, need to avoid the trap of tourist first development that alienates locals. And so I think that if we can get the projects on a great foot to get off the ground, that would be significant in helping them obtain funding. And also, the point we made earlier, the infrastructure that needs to be there. So what happens if there isn't what's needed? A great example, a very large manufacturer going into a town, which is fantastic, and they're going to hire 700 employees, but there's no housing for those employees. So now what do we do? Because ultimately, when you have the people that move in to work in that facility, then they're also going to be experiencing the area for the first time. So even though they're now residents, they're your tourists too. So there's tourism there. And then something, that Roz mentioned is what happens after the ribbon cutting? Are they in a place? Are they set up? Are they ready to run it? Are they trained? Is it scalable? What's next? Because at the end of the day, tourism's not just about buildings, it's about experiences and hospitality and storytelling.
Exactly.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect note to end on, like just the fount that you ladies just poured out. It's just a beautiful ribbon, double tied. I so appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. And for those who are listening, you are welcome to join us on April 28th for our Building Businesses in Black Appalachia conference that is happening at Shepherd University. There will be a QR code that you can scan, and certainly going to bridginginnovationsweek.org. You can find out more and get your ticket. There will be more of this great conversation and even greater insights, as well as you meeting with your fellow collaborators that we talked about when you're wanting to collaborate as you're building these out. perfect opportunity to learn, to collaborate, and then pour back into the community. Thank you again, Roz and Jessica.
Thank you so much. And I enjoyed you, Jessica, and spending time with you ladies. Take care.
And you as well. Thank you.